Hello, bună ziua, buongiorno, buenos dias, bonjour, and welcome to the Human Protocol of Avexa podcast. I'm Theodora Savlovschi-Wicks. I'm the founder of Avexa Partners and your host. The idea behind Avexa is pretty simple. We're here to shine a light on the individuals inside the drug development industry. Because whilst we absolutely embrace AI and automation, the tools that free us from the monotonous, the repetitive, the less glamorous corners of work, our focus stays firmly on human interaction. The emotion, the trust, the joy of a new role, the shift that happens inside a team when the right person walks through the door. The Human Protocol sits at the heart of all that. Each episode, we explore the human, either as a professional navigating a career inside drug development, or as the patient at the very center of the protocol we're all here to serve.
Welcome back to the Human Protocol, a Avexa podcast. I met today's guest at CRA Connect in Barcelona a couple of months ago, where she was on stage talking about burnout in a CRA's career. She is a previous CRA, she is a mother, and most recently she's now the founder and CEO of MetaboHub. She is building Bulgaria's first GLP-1 program, and the controversy around them, all the health fluences these days. It's also about one's careers as a CRA. It's about one's non-linear trajectory in their careers. It's about motherhood. It's about entrepreneurship. It's about womanhood. And it is about metabolic health. Tihomira, welcome to the Human Protocol. Let's get started. Hi, Tihomira. It's so lovely to have you as a guest on the Human Protocol podcast. Thank you so much for agreeing.
You're very welcome to you. I'm so glad to see you as well. I mean, you're a wonderful person. I enjoyed spending time with you in Barcelona, so I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Let's start off, by telling our listener a little bit about your background and who you are. Obviously, we've met at CRA Connect in Barcelona, and we've been in touch since.
Sure. My background, I studied pharmacy at Medical University of Sofia. I started my first CRA job relatively young, so I was 24. When I landed my first CRA job, I was still at med school at this time, and then I started building my CRA career. At some point, I have created the CRA Wizard, which is my blog for clinical research, and then I created the community for clinical research people and professionals in Bulgaria. Spoiler alert, it's called Clinical Research Bulgaria. I started organizing these networking events for people working in clinical research around here. And recently I had my first baby girl. My daughter was born. And at some point during my maternity leave, I had decided that it was about time I started my own company. So I started building MetaboHub just 4 months ago. And here we are today.
Wonderful. Congratulations on both daughter and the business.
Thank you.
So I guess, something that you spoke about at CRA Connect as well was the burnout aspect of a CRA position. Was that, conducive of you deciding to do something else? Or what was it that, prompted your change and your move into entrepreneurship?
Well, I've experienced burnout, but not at this particular moment. Actually, it was prior in my career. I mean, it wasn't that severe or anything, but it is something it exists in this strange space that at the same time we talk a lot about it, but at the same time, nothing is really being said. So that was the reason that I decided to join when Maria asked, and I thought this is actually a great topic that we could discuss during the conference. So burnout in particular did not have anything to do with my decision to build a company, but it was definitely something I have experienced in the past.
So what was it that prompted it? What made you think I'm going to start this? And I'm going to start this now, just after finishing my maternity leave at this point in my life.
Yeah. Well, by the way, it's still not finished. So I've started it in the middle of my maternity leave. So I don't know. It's just for the longest time, all my life, I thought that at some point I'm going to build something on my own. And it was mainly because of my relationship with work. I've always loved my job very much. And CRA was my dream job for as long as I can remember, really. So I've always worked with very, very, very high intensity. So 9 to 5 was never the thing for me. I was always working during holidays, Christmas, vacations, these kind of things. And at some point I realized if I am going to work with this intensity anyway, I might as well just building something on my own. During my maternity leave, I was dealing with postpartum, which is a whole other topic. But pretty much I've had a lot of challenge returning to myself, to my body, feeling again as myself. Working out as I used to, sport is a huge part of my life anyways. And despite I knew all of this, I mean, all of the pharma background and clinical trials background provided me with a lot of tools to know exactly what type of medications work, mechanism of action, and these kind of things. And despite that, it was extremely difficult for me to do so. And around that time, my daughter was probably 7 months old. So I figured if I have all of this knowledge and if I'm still struggling and if there is no such service in Bulgaria that could help women postpartum or women in menopause or people who are overweight, pre-diabetic people, and these kind of patients in general, then we are having a serious issue. So I've seen this huge gap dedicated to metabolic health, and I have decided that it's about time I do something about it. So this is what led me to build MetaboHub. And it was a very tough decision in general, not because I was scared it's going to be hard or anything, but because that meant that I had to say goodbye to my CRA career, and it has already been a decade in clinical research. And for someone else, it could be like very irrational that I felt this way. But for me, as I mentioned, this was my dream job. So it wasn't something that I was escaping from, but it was exactly the opposite. It was something else that I was building towards.
Mm-hmm. And do you think part of the CRA career that you've built, and obviously the knowledge that you've gained throughout that career, kind of supported your decision, or your knowledge kind of, helped you build the
Yes.
knowledge that you needed to get to this point?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is something that most clinical research people and CRAs, they just don't realize how talented and gifted they are, because we have everything and it's very unique set of skills. I mean, protocol literacy, PM knowledge, managing a whole project, working under pressure, and in general, understanding the pharmacology data that we are producing with clinical trials. It's a huge, huge help, especially if you decide to build a healthcare startup afterwards. A lot of these qualities, they just translate.
Absolutely. And how are you finding it? 4 months in?
It's been wild of a ride, honestly. I mean, I love what we are building and I'm already very happy with the result. At the moment, we have 17 patients and
Amazing.
most of them are actually women, and most of them are actually in menopause or around this stage of their life. So it turns out that we are very, very much focused in women metabolic health and women healthcare in general, which actually taught me a lot. And I never really realized how much this means because, as I said, it turns out this is not something taken very seriously in general in medicine or in preventative medicine. So it turns out that there is this huge need of this particular service. And this really taught me a lot. And it gives me this very nice feeling at the evening when I'm going to bed that we're actually helping people achieve what they want and be metabolically healthy. And despite that, it's been a roller coaster. We had lots of ups and downs. For example, I could give you a few few recent pain points, in particular Meta ads. So Facebook and Instagram ads, that's been literally pain in the ass because apparently Meta algorithm reads us as absolute scammers written on our foreheads. Because if they see telemedicine, metabolic health, fully online, it absolutely thinks you're a total scammer selling peptides on the internet, which we are not. I know, sounds legit, right?
Yeah, we're not. We're not scammers. No, believe us.
Yeah. But that's the thing, trying to convince Facebook algorithm that what you're doing is actually legal and it's legit telemedicine, it's been a whole trip. But despite that, I'm very happy with the company growth, with the MRR, with the happy patients, and in general, with everything that I have learned so far. It's been amazing.
Have you found yourself, learning more from the data that you're getting out of these treatments when it
Oh,
comes to women
yes.
metabolic health?
Yes, absolutely. This is one of the most amazing things that I've seen in the past 4 months. And that's actually one of the reasons I've started doing these clinical trials breakdown articles, where basically I explain about the new drugs coming, new generation of drugs, what they're doing, their mechanism of action, what we know from the data so far. and it's been absolutely amazing. I learned so much, and I can only compare the feeling with being a junior CRA all over again, because everything is new, and most of the time I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. But I do enjoy learning about all of these things, and it excites me so much.
And supporting women along the way.
Yes, of course.
We can't ignore that GLP-1s have become a cultural phenomenon, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of influences, there's a lot of conversations online pretty much, everywhere. Every time you look at your phone, you get another talk about a peptide, or you get another, unlicensed conversation most of the time, or uneducated and pharmaceutical conversation from a lot of different influencers who have different opinions on GLP-1s or different peptides in general. Should we be worried? What do we need to be aware of when we are being
Yeah.
targeted? I don't think there's anybody, listening in, or anybody I know that hasn't been targeted by this at this point, to be honest.
Well, there are several aspects of this. The first thing is that I call them not influencers, but healthfluencers. But that's the thing. They don't have any whatsoever health backgrounds.
Mm.
So that's the issue with it. Those are people who have certain following on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, you name it. So they have this audience that they're talking to about a very hot topic. So naturally it becomes viral. But those are people who have absolutely no medical background, no pharmaceutical backgrounds. I could almost guarantee that 99% of them have never even read a clinical
Mm.
trial study or protocol or data or anything like that. So more or less, they have absolutely no idea what they are talking about. And still their content, it looks the same as actual medical content, and influencers have become very good in pretending to be actually medical content or pharmaceutical content, and I find this very, very, very dangerous, because for the majority of people, for the average Joe, they don't really know what is real and what isn't. They can't really distinguish between real pharma content and imaginary healthfluencer pharma content, let's call it.
Mm.
And it's very dangerous, because then people think that they're actually getting medical information and medical knowledge when they are not. And that's the thing. That's actually one of the things that we are trying to do with MetaboHub. We are trying to create a lot of content and a lot of breakdowns, explain in simple terms, so people could actually understand them and distinguish between what they're being told or by a
What's being
particular
sold to
influencer.
them?
Yeah, yes, exactly. So that's the thing. And about peptides in general, I don't honestly think there's something necessarily evil. I don't have bad opinion on it. I mean, it's a molecule like everything else, but clinical trials exist for a reason. I mean, obviously we've tried the other way, it did not work. So that's the reason we have clinical trials, because this is how you have integrity, safety, you have monitoring, and everything is being done in a controlled, safe space with predictable outcomes. When you take a random molecule produced in someone's basement somewhere in a warehouse in the world, and then it gets to you, you have absolutely no idea what is it in the vial, what is the dosage, what you're injecting to yourself. And there are so many cases that are actually going to TER because of this, because people have injected themselves with something that they have absolutely no idea what is it. And what kills me the most, usually those are the same people who have absolute mistrust in the big pharma and vaccines. And those are the same people who are telling, oh, I'm not going to get an COVID-19 vaccine because I don't trust the data. It's not been long enough. And then at the same time, they just go and buy some random peptide from a random dude on TikTok, and then they inject themselves with it. I mean, it has absolutely no logic for me.
So I guess, we should just be very concerned and wary of the influencers and the health fluencers, right? And there's a
Yes,
clear line between education, marketing, and exploitation. And I think obviously we see more and more examples of people falling victim to the exploitation aspect of it, with individuals that have no medical background or
absolutely.
pharmaceutical background. How would you advise people to kind of look out for the signs of, basically exploitation at this point, right? And how would you
Yeah.
advise them to look out for what is legitimate, and what do they need to look out for? How can they inform themselves on what is useful, what isn't, what is legitimately coming from somebody with the appropriate background, and what is just,
Yeah.
marketing?
Well, I think it goes both ways. I think it's a mutual responsibility. So, first of all, people with medical and pharmaceutical background, I think it's an absolute responsibility to actually produce um, available content for people to understand, because this is our responsibility. And this is something that, as I mentioned, I myself personally am trying to do quite a lot. But also from the average people perspective, they need to search for valid sources of information. There are so many websites like clinicaltrials.gov, like PubMed, like actual available data from clinical trials recorded. Clinical trials, what most people don't realize is that clinical trials are usually extremely transparent. And if you're searching for the correct information, you could see it, because pharma companies are usually not hiding it because they want to brag about it. They want to brag about what they have achieved with this clinical trial. So it does take a little bit more effort to find the correct source of information, but if you're looking for this particular information online, the actual data from clinical trials, it's a lot more reliable than a guy on a TikTok.
True. So would you say, I guess, you mentioned there's obviously a need for metabolic health education, knowledge, support in Bulgaria, but I would go as far as say, in the world, right?
Yeah.
What can we do as consumers, as, I guess, individuals in the industry who, as you say, although we may work in the industry, we don't actually know how to manage our own conditions a lot of the time. And especially
Yeah.
when it comes to women's metabolic health. What would you say, what would be the best of advice for us to kind of take matters into our own hands, but not take it too far where, we buy peptides off a random influencer?
I think the best advice really is to have the right tools to be equipped with, meaning that you need to keep yourself informed, and you need to keep yourself informed not only from social media, not as your the only one source of information, but actually from legit sources of information. So you need to read about it a little bit more if you're interested. Ask your doctor, trust your doctor, follow up with a doctor is a major one. Because after all, if this is something that you're not really interested in, I mean, obviously people have different interests. It's not a field that you would like to learn more. That's totally all right. For example, I'm not a space engineer, architect, or anything like this. So if I'm looking for information in that space or in that regard, I'm going to find someone who knows about it and then just ask. So that's, for me, honestly, that's the only right approach.
Find the experts and trust the experts.
Exactly.
That's the message. So obviously you're building MetaboHub in Bulgaria. What does the regulatory and telemedicine landscape look like for GLP-1 treatment in Southern Europe, and why does that gap matter?
Right. Well, until recently, and by recently, I mean very recently, last month in May, it was practically non-existent. So the thing is that telemedicine in general is something great because it gives access to medicine to people from all over the country. And honestly, I think this is the future. This is how things need to be done. But up until 25th of May this year, there was absolutely no regulation. So telemedicine in Bulgaria existed in this gray space. So it was not forbidden, but also there was absolutely no regulation how things needs to be done. So that regulation obviously arrived mid-build. We were already building MetaboHub when this regulation came into action, and we had to adapt really fast. But in general, I see it as a good thing, despite the popular opinion, because this gives us the opportunity to actually provide a legit service and feel safe about it. So this is actually a great thing. But in general, regulatory space in Bulgaria, not only in Bulgaria, but in general in Eastern Europe, I don't think it looks very good because people are not very well familiar with this medication. Not yet. I mean, for us who are working in clinical trials, yes, this is a very hot topic. But for the majority of people, you'll be surprised how many people they've never even heard of GLP-1 and they have no idea what this is. So that's the thing.
They may have heard of a single brand name, right?
Yes, exactly. But the scary part is that even doctors are not that familiar with them yet, and they don't really have the habit to use them as a therapy. For example, they usually suggest only lifestyle changes and diet and exercise to people who are already pre-diabetes, which is hilarious. And they don't really know the thing just yet, so they also need to level up their game.
Whose responsibility do you think it is to better educate GPs when it comes to GLP-1 usage?
Again, everyone's responsibility. I think pharma companies play a huge role here. But the thing is that there is this mistrust from the pharma companies because usually people don't trust the evil big pharma, which is crazy to me because First of all, it's pharma. Every medication started from somewhere, even aspirin. So obviously we trust some, so why don't we trust all of them? But I think pharma companies play a huge role in educating people about GLP-1s, and they should not shy away from the topic, despite having a huge stigma on it. But also at the same time, doctors, educators, pharmacists, all people with health backgrounds who actually know what they're talking about, they should take matter into their own hands.
Do you think it's perhaps, it's like cultural misunderstanding when it comes to the resistance to the big pharma? Do you see more of a prevalence of it in Eastern Europe? I think, obviously as a Romanian, I think, I have my own views on this. We're basically neighbors.
Yes. Yes, I know how you feel about it. I don't think it's in particularly Eastern Europe. I think it's Europe in general because it's not the same situation in the States. Because
Uh-huh.
similar companies to mine, they do very, very well in the States. Obviously, the problem is huge there, but also in Europe and in Bulgaria.
I think, I was mentioning more of a distrust in medications or a distrust in big pharma in
Yes.
general, and I think it's perhaps, at times it could be seen as a bit of a cultural mistrust, right? And I think in general, there are countries that are more likely to not believe or to not want to use it or to not want to follow the trends.
Yes, I know what you mean. Well, I am sure that your grandma as well have a several home remedies for absolutely everything, including curing cancer. So mine is the same way. Yes, people usually don't really trust big pharma and don't even trust doctors, which is crazy to me again because I have no idea why. I think the turn off for most people is that they know that big pharma profits from medications and quite a lot. We are talking about billions and billions of dollars. But that's the thing. Pharma is business like everything else, and that does not necessarily make it bad. And I've never even thought that there is a huge conspiracy about any medication or big pharma in general, because imagine, have you even tried to coordinate 10 people to do the same thing? Now imagine trying to pull off a conspiracy with hundreds of people trying to coordinate them
And
to do the same
thousands,
thing.
yeah.
Yes, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And especially for people who work in clinical trials like you and me, we know this very well because we know how much hard work it takes to put together a clinical trials, how long it takes, and how many people are usually involved in the whole chain. So it makes sense for the profit to be huge because the investment is also huge and takes many, many, many years and a lot of human resources. But this is also the thing that people don't realize, so that's why they don't really trust in pharma.
No, it's easier to have cabbage leaves in your socks. That's one that I remember from my grandmother when I was a child, the cabbage leaves and the onion leaves, I think, and
Oh,
eating all the
okay.
garlic, just to
Yeah.
sanitize it all.
Yeah, garlic usually sanitizes everything, including your sinuses, very well.
Yeah, exactly that. How would you say, talking about platforms and obviously, online presence and the rise of telemedicine, which obviously I think, we've seen quite a bit of a rise throughout the COVID pandemic period. And then it kind of took a dip again and it's back in the spotlight to a certain degree now. But how would you define the line between a wellness platform and a medical one? And how can we better educate?
It's a very tough line to draw, really, because nowadays wellness platforms are very good at looking like medical platforms. But the only and the major difference is that with the medical platform, you actually have access to real doctors. You have doctor follow up, doctor monitoring, doctor advice, and not AI doctors generated on the homepage, but actual human beings, real doctors. So that's the most distinguishable thing.
Now you're still throughout your maternity leave. I don't know many women, who would be on maternity leave and decide to start a company halfway through. Do you see yourself, growing MetaboHub outside of Bulgaria, or what is your plan for the foreseeable? Or do you have a plan, or you kind of, just going to see how it goes?
I hope so very much to grow it outside of Bulgaria, but that's the thing. My first big milestone was to reach 10 patients. So my next big milestone is to reach 100 patients. So once we have 100 patients in Bulgaria, I'm honestly thinking about expanding it outside of Bulgaria. Actually, Romania is the first place that I'm thinking to expand as a second country. The thing is that healthcare systems work differently in different countries. So we can't really have Bulgarian doctors prescribing Romanian patients medication and vice versa. So I would probably need some contacts in every country that I decide to expand to. So yeah, I'd very much like that. So it's definitely in my plans for the future.
So call to action to the listeners, get in touch with Tihomira if you'd like to get involved with MetaboHub
Yes,
from the
please.
surrounding countries.
Yes, please. I'd really appreciate it.
What would you say, from a slightly more personal point of view? So, you're pretty much at the height of your CRA career. You've gone through motherhood. What
Yeah.
lessons have you learned? Or I guess, what's been the biggest shift in mindset from, being an employee to becoming an entrepreneur at this point in your life?
Well, two things, honestly. The first thing is that you need to try. I mean, doesn't matter how crazy your idea is or whatever it is that you want to do, you still need to try. And you need to try and start before you have everything perfectly planned, because you're going to change the plan either way so many times that you have no idea. So someone has to be lucky. Why not you? So that was my idea behind it, really. And the second thing is that when you're a CRA, you're working in this very nice structure, especially if you're working in a big corporation. You have your structured hours, structured responsibilities, structured side. And at the end of the month, you still receive your salary. When you're a founder, you don't have that floor underneath you. And you don't have anywhere to hide when something goes wrong. And everything comes back to you, especially the failures, which is very clarifying, but also terrifying at the same time.
Yes, I know the feeling. um, Obviously, you've mentioned, there was a lot of skills that you've gained throughout your CRA career that kind of prepared you for the entrepreneurship, right? And the overall ability to kind of project manage and, to have that structured view of working is, something that a lot of people can take on to the next career paths, I guess. What would you say, didn't help you? Or what was it, did you have any bad habits from your past CRA career that were, not so great for your step into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I could tell you right away, my obsession for details is definitely not
Mm.
A plus, because I used to be CRA for 10 years. I have a very, very, very detail oriented attention to detail,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So at the beginning, I got this idea that everything needs to be perfect. And I didn't realize that everything is going to change in the next 2 weeks, in the next 3 weeks, at least 5 or 6 times. So that's the thing. That's one thing that I'm really struggling with. And another thing that totally did not translate, and I could tell you right about it, it's marketing skills, or dealing with Meta's algorithms, or dealing with online banking, or payments, or Stripe, or people who are constantly flagging you and flagging your business as scammers again. These kind of things. So this is something that I'm learning on the go with it. And I've never done this before in my life. I've never done any sort of content. I've never done marketing. I've never dealt with Facebook ads.
I think everybody who's, who goes through the entrepreneurship side of things, I think a lot of people, myself included, right? We start a business from what we enjoy doing and what we feel passionate about doing day in and day
Exactly.
out. And we don't necessarily take into account, for me personally, as the VAT returns, or,
Yeah,
when I charge VAT, when I don't charge VAT, how do I register for VAT? There's a whole conversation around VAT that I never before thought about. But there's obviously so many different things in the background, right, that go into running the business that you don't necessarily think of when you do the job, which can be quite scary to kind of be stuck into.
exactly.
But we learn, I guess not everybody is suited to this lifestyle, I would say, or to, to this type of environment. If there's, people listening right now who are at a similar place in their careers, what would your advice be if they've been, dreaming about becoming an entrepreneur? They've got an idea for a business.
They should definitely start, because it all comes back to, you have to choose your suffering, because you're going to suffer either way. So either you're going to suffer on your corporate job knowing that you never did the thing that you really wanted to do, and you're going to have to live with the what ifs, which is very painful, by the way. And on the other hand, you're going to suffer with building your own business, or calculating VAT, or dealing with Facebook ads, or dealing with the fear that you may not have any patience tomorrow, or your business may fail. So I definitely choose, obviously, I've chosen my suffering, because at least there is nothing dull about it.
Yeah, true. Choose, pick your poison, right?
Yeah, choose your suffering wisely. That's my advice.
and just go for it and just do it.
Absolutely.
What do you think, or what do you hope the future of healthcare and wellness looks like in this space?
I see the bright future ahead. No, honestly, in general, the future of healthcare for me is definitely hybrids. I believe that medicine should be accessible and available to everyone, not
Mm-hmm.
only to the rich. And I'm saying this with a lot of pain in my heart because I know that this has been the situation in Bulgaria pretty much, unfortunately. I don't think that you should wait months in line to have access to a doctor who is absolutely not interested in you or your medical history or have no idea about a new available treatment that you're asking about. So medicine should be accessible to everyone. And in general, metabolic medicine, because obviously I have very strong feelings about this, should definitely be made widely popular because these are conditions that people are really, really struggling with. And this is maybe number one killer in the world. I mean, diabetes type 2. And also, we should pay a lot more attention to prevention medicine because, as per statistics, in Bulgaria at least, every third person in Bulgaria is overweight and every fourth person is considered clinically obese. I mean, it's crazy. And in the States, it's even worse. But actually, for the first time in the history in the US, actually, numbers of obese people have started to decrease because of the GOPs, which
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely wild. I mean, it blew my mind when I read this. So I'm hoping very much that we're going to have this awareness in healthcare, that it should be accessible and available, and metabolic medicine should actually start be taken serious, not as something complementary.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And do you think with the rise of obviously AI, everybody's kind of talking at the moment, about the use of AI and ChatGPT in particular when it comes to medical discussions from patients. What are your views from patients kind of using AI to
Yeah.
self-diagnose or self-help?
It really depends on the extent that they're using it. For example, if you have any sort of question that you are interested in and you'd like to learn more about a particular disease or medication, sure, why not? It's an amazing tool. It's innovation, like pharma. So you should definitely use it, but with a grain of salt that it's not a doctor after all. I mean, it's very capable and it has access to all of the information available out there in the wild world, but it's still not your doctor. And I
Mm.
feel the same way about taking random medical advice from online
Yeah.
doctors who are not your particular doctor and are not familiar with your
Mm-hmm.
medical history and particular condition. So, of course, people should use AI. It's amazing. I love it. I use it myself all the time for work, for personal needs. But you should not really take this as a medical diagnosis or anything like that.
Yeah. So the messaging is always go back to your doctor and speak to a professional and the
Of
expert in
course.
you.
Of course. That's the main point.
No, thank you for that. It's very useful. And I think, we've covered some really useful ground. So finally, I guess, where can our listeners find you? LinkedIn, TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok. That's not something that I could make myself do. I'm 32 years old woman. I have decided I am not gonna have a TikTok. I, in general, don't like social media at all, to be honest. But I am very accessible in LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, email, so whatever. They could always reach me in LinkedIn because this is where I am most active and I'm posting the most in LinkedIn because I actually find this platform quite useful, unlike Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, usually in LinkedIn.
Perfect. So the next episode is when you reach 100, right?
I
Patients.
hope so very much. I'll keep you posted.
Well, at this rate, it'll be 1,000 by the time we speak next time. So yeah, the very best of luck.
Thank you very much, Theo.
Thank you so much, Tihomira. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you for your time.
Likewise.